Hi, I'm Andrew Seltz, the creator and publisher of DIYBookbinding.com and also DIYBookforum.com, a couple of websites that I've created to and basically to follow up on my passion for bookbinding and my little hobby that I've created here. What I wanted to talk to you about today was about a bookbinding jig that I created. This is something that I made basically to help me with my bookbinding projects. I mostly print out ebooks and a few things that I make, print and bind my own stuff. But usually it's just printing out an ebook that I've downloaded somewhere. And when I first started out, it was a very low rent, very low tech affair. Basically, paint stirring sticks and some clamps and things like that. It worked, but I refined the process, and the refinements that I got from using this bookbinding jig made a huge difference in both the quality of the work that I turned out, the energy and frustration involved in making the books, and then just overall quality and enjoyment I had. And of course you can do it a lot faster too, which is always nice. I started out, like I said, doing books that I was creating just because I had some ebooks that I wanted to print out. This is actually the first book that I made. It's called Writing Nonfiction, and I wanted to have a physical copy. Originally I printed it out. You can see from the holes punched in it here. I don't know if you can make that out, but I originally printed it out and put it in a 3-ring binder, carried that big old bulky thing around with me, and then one day I decided I was going to see if I could actually make this up like a paperback. And so I got my paint stirring sticks, I lined them all up, I clamped everything down, and I put some Gorilla Glue, not a good choice, put some Gorilla Glue on there. Here we are about 6 or 7 years later now, and the pages are still holding together. It's still strong. The covers seen better days, but the book block itself is still in great shape. And it did what I wanted it to do. I have a physical copy. It doesn't take up anywhere near as much space as a 3-ring binder does, and I've got my book. But there was a couple problems with that process, because I've obviously did more books than just that one. And here's a good one for an example. I printed this book out. Of course, my process got better. I started using multiple pages per sheet of paper, so that I was using less paper, more like a traditional paperback book that you'd expect to get at a bookstore. But the problem is I had to put those binding clamps on here, those paint stirring sticks. You can go to my website at DIYBookbinding.com and actually see the tutorial with the photographs. That was the first thing I ever did with bookbinding. And you can see how I clamped with binder clamps all the way along the spine, these wooden paint stirring sticks, and then I had to lift the clamps off and put a little glue on and clamp it back down and lift the next one off, and work my way back and forth down the spine. And then if you can look real close here, I don't know if you can make that out, but I use the Gorilla Glue, not a good choice. It stains the paper. It's very hard, so it doesn't bend well. And then it also leaves a kind of a bumpy surface if you leave a little extra glue on there, because it expands while it's drying, and it can kind of foam up. So you've got to make sure and get all the excess glue. Don't recommend it. Use something different now. But the biggest problem I had was because the clamps were sitting over the top, you couldn't do the cover and the spine at the same time. So you basically had to create your book block, and you had to take everything off. Hopefully the glue sticks didn't get stuck to the edge of the book binding. You have to cut them off. But then I just never got around to actually putting the covers on, because then I had to take it all apart and then go and do a separate step to do the cover. And you can see the lumpy spine. It's not going to be a smooth cover, not on the spine. So I would end up just not doing it. And so I've got 4 or 5 books at least like this, where beautiful book, still holds up well, no covers, because it was just too much of a pain to do it. So that was where I came in with the with the bookbinding jig here, and made the huge leap in my quality as well as my enjoyment of doing this. And this book right here is a perfect example of what I could create once I went to this new process. The spine, take a look here, see if you can see that. Very, very clean edge on there. The spine is very smooth. I went with different glues, obviously. I use epoxy sometimes, PVA glues. Every now and again I'll use like a neoprene glue. So there's a few things. I write about that on the forum too. There's some discussions about different glue things you can use. But the nice thing is you can see, look at the clean edge here, the clean edge here, how nicely this book block and covers lay down, very smooth. It's just a really nice finish. If I had printed a color cover for this, this would be an excellent book. So it's a great result, and it's all done with off-the-shelf paper. It's off, nothing that I got fancy. I didn't go anywhere and buy anything special. It's stuff I got from the copy shop and from the office supply store, and put it together with the jig. And the whole thing, once you've got the jig, when it's printed out and folded, from there it takes you maybe 5 or 10 minutes to do the actual binding at the most. And this is basically how it works. There's an article on the site, I may have mentioned that already, but there's an article on the site where I actually have some detailed photographs so you can see this really close up. But it's not very complicated. It's just a piece of board that I found for the base. This happens to be a piece of trim board on that was for a building project. It's floor trim, wide floor trim. So I basically lopped off the end to get it roughly the right length. Then I got a couple of pre-cut pieces of lumber here that I just trimmed to length that I use for my backstop and my side stop, and then also another one for my pressure bar and my clamp pressure bar. And these are glued on, so I basically put some adhesive on there, clamped it down, the adhesive, clamp it down until that dried, and then this, you drill a couple of holes through, drill it all the way through to the back, and then use a couple of bolts, some washers, a couple of wing nuts, and essentially once you slide your pages in, and get everything lined up and jogged, press down, clamp this down nice and tight, give it a couple of turns to get everything snug. And then the nice thing is, you'll see there's a slight, it's hard to make out here in this video, but there's a slight lip where the paper is sticking just a little bit above the edge of the pressure board here, and that's so that when you apply your glue, that it doesn't stick to the sides of the pressure board and then end up having your book block stuck into the jig. And then the nice thing about this is you can do the covers and the spine at the same time, so you can lay the cover in the back here. Once you've applied your glue, you just fold the cover over, set this whole thing down like that till the glue sets, and then release the pressure bar, pull the pages out, one more fold, maybe trim the edges off, and your book is done. Again, there is a video on the DIYbookbinding.com site that shows you everything step by step all the way through, me binding up a book, trimming the cover and everything. And so that's basically what I did. And that's, really all there is to it. And I thought that would be enough. When I wrote about it, I explained pretty much what I did to you, just said to you here. But I took some really close-up photographs so people could really see, in and around here. And I thought that would be enough. Most people would be able to just run out, grab some lumber, go in the workshop and figure it out for themselves and make their own clamps. But I found that I was getting a lot of comments from people saying, do you have a detailed step-by-step plan? Can you give me an equipment list, all the specific things I need to buy? And I came to realize that not everyone is quite as comfortable going to the local home center or hardware store as I am. I kind of grew up doing that stuff, so don't really think that hard about it. It just kind of comes natural. So I did go and put together a report that's very, very detailed, lots of close-up photographs and illustrations. I actually draw out very specifically what to buy, and I tell you exactly what lumber to buy, what it's called, what its measurements are. I show you exactly what hardware to buy, exactly, all the numbers and illustrations and everything, and it's basically a list you could walk down to your local, home center, hand it to one of those guys in the, orange aprons and just say, give me this stuff. And they'd be able to go and get you everything you need, bring it back to you. And I gave you some tips and tricks about how to, basically have to do the least amount of detailed work, cutting and things like that. Because if you're not comfortable with tools, trying to do precision cuts is a little bit complicated. So I basically worked it out so that you don't have to do hardly any cutting at all, and what you do have to do doesn't require extreme precision, so that pretty much anybody can build it if they follow the plan. So if you're interested in that, there's more information about it over on the DIY Bookbinding website. You can go check that out. But build yourself a jig. If you're doing paperback bookbinding, you will absolutely love having a bookbinding jig. It'll change what you do completely. So Andrew Seltz, wishing you happy bookbinding. Have a great day, and go visit the DIY Bookbinding website, DIYbookbinding.com. Take care.